Hello, welcome to another Marketing Chit Chat with Brandon Utley and Laura Greeno. Today we are talking about repurposing content, how to get 10x more out of the things you already do, right? You're already doing. We want to make the most out of what we've already done. So I'm going to let Brandon start. I think he's got some good ideas. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. This is a fun topic because I think a lot of people make the mistake of focusing on one or two channels to the detriment of everything else. And for example, a lot of people for years have been obsessed with creating these really great blog posts for their website. And so they spend hours and hours refining that content and all that. But typically that's just written content, that you put on your website. And then you might get around to, tweeting out links to that or what have you. But if you step back and think about broadening the reach of that content, then you might not start with just writing the blog post. That actually may come much later. So one way to think about it is, be strategic at first and think, if we're going to be spending a lot of time creating meaningful, meaty content, how can we package it in a number of different formats so that we can reach people if they're watching YouTube videos, if they're, surfing social media and they're seeing interesting headlines that lead them to look at stuff elsewhere. And, so we need to think about it, not just from writing words with the keyboard, but can we also articulate things like we're doing now on video, doing it on audio with podcasts and things like that. So that's kind of the overarching strategy, is to think more broadly, just to start with. What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so my thoughts around that is just to plan ahead. So what I tell people is basically everybody's got if you're doing content, you've got a calendar, right? You know what content is going to be written at what time and where it's going to go and all of that. So just put it in the calendar. Okay. And so when you write it, you've got, okay, I'm going to revisit this and schedule a notification to come to me in a quarter or 6 months or next year or whenever it is. And each time you go back in and you've got your list of what to look at, you're going to kind of prioritize it or rate those based on, right, how well it's performing, how many people are going there. So, and frequency of that, right? So the frequency is going to be higher if it's more popular. And you might even want to add like a call to action at it. That was one of like HubSpot had a little article. I want to talk about 3 things from them, but that was one of their really good ideas. If you've got an article that's performing well, add a CTA at the bottom, all right? To get something more out of it. So,
Yeah.
So frequency, value, and just put it into the plan.
Yeah, I mean, your planning ahead kind of goes into the same thing I said about being strategic, because the worst thing is when you go back to that blog post example, somebody creates this beautiful 1,500 word blog post or whatever, and everybody goes, yay, congratulations, good job. And then they go, wow, we should have done a video around this or something. And then you're backtracking. Whereas if you think differently, you go, all right, how can we make this more streamlined? We have a topic that we want to cover. First thing we're going to do maybe is have a conversation between 2 people, and we're going to record that conversation. And that could be then, set aside as a audio that can be turned into a podcast, or even better, you could do it on video like we're doing now. And oftentimes I've done this with clients. Actually, we'll have a conversation where we just say, this is kind of a brain dump session. Don't worry about all the words coming out of your mouth, just so, and everything. We may meander a little bit, but the first conversation, we're going to have a conversation about a topic, and we're going to go back and forth, and we're going to dump all that in, and then we'll refine it. We'll kind of clean it up, and then we'll say, all right, here's a tighter script based on what we already talked about. Now we're going to go back and actually shoot you on camera with a script that you can go by that's going to be recorded for audio. So you've got, number one, you got a YouTube video you can publish. Then you have a podcast episode that could be 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or however long. So you extract that, publish it as a podcast. You could also transcribe that video and then edit it into your blog post, right? Or, some combination of that, or a series of posts. Then you can start doing things like, let's extract some quotes out that we can make into pretty graphics for Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or wherever, in addition to tweets, etc. So you think about how can you, I think somebody called it atomize, take the big chunk and split it down into the smallest segments possible. That's how you really get a lot of repurposed content. But if you do what I'm talking about, like spend 30 minutes or an hour getting a topic out of your head and then doing it and refining it, you've got so much content. Because for example, I do a podcast every week and it's 30 minutes. That is a lot of content. Now I'm bad because I do two things. I recorded it on video and put it on YouTube, and I also publish it as a podcast. I'm not as good as, I don't drink my own Kool-Aid about transcribing it and splitting it up into a bunch of places. I do promote it a little bit, but that's just a matter of timing. But if I'm coaching a company that has more resources, definitely going to tell them, don't just publish the podcast by itself and be done with it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you run with that for a second, because I have a person at my doorbell, to be honest with you. So I'm gonna have to check this while you keep this conversation going, and I'm gonna be right back, Laura.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
All right. So I wanted to tell you about planning ahead, just put it in your calendar. The 3 things from HubSpot that I thought were good, we already hit. So the first one was really add the CTA, add your calls to action at the bottom of top performing, right? And you might schedule this, right? Like, I'm going to look at this depends how much content you put out. But if you're just a small business, which most of you are, you're going to look at it maybe every month or every quarter, depending on how much you put out. And the top performing ones are the one you want to update or recycle. A good way to update, right? Let's say you just need to update that particular one. And you're like, should I repurpose it, or should I update it right now? Or should I republish it after updating? So if you can, the best thing to do for your search results, that kind of piece of the pie, is to update a blog post and change the date if your platform allows you to. If it doesn't, you can consider repurposing depending on how your values of, is search engine more important, or is getting this content republished in another place more important? So you decide that. What is another thing I wanted to talk about? Oh, some of my favorite ways to repurpose are roundups, right? Like the end of the year, or the end of the month, or the best of the best, or the best of the week. What was the best of the week? And then you got another whole piece of content around that. Series, breaking things up, like Brandon was saying about atomizing. Really, just when you've got something big, plan ahead. Know you're going to break it up. So decide ahead of time. I know I'm going to break up this documentary into, mini trailers, basically, is what you're going to do. I know I'm going to break this up into a series of 1, 2, 3, if it's kind of a longer piece of content. Those are kind of my favorite things. Breaking up videos, pulling GIFs out of videos. One thing Brandon already mentioned, but like if you are tweeting, right? You've got tweets, you got all kinds of tweets, and that's your thing. I love that one. I see this all the time, where you just pull a nice little tweet out and you put it on top of an image of yourself or your company or something important, and you repurpose it on another platform. So you're actually tweeting on Facebook or Instagram, so I think that's so easy and really looks I think it looks great when it's done well. I think it looks great and it makes sense because not everybody's going to see you on all the platforms, but you might want to share that same piece of information on all the platforms. Just a couple of more thoughts, right? Webinars can be turned into video tutorials or even classes. I do like turning any kind of PowerPoint presentation that you have to do, maybe it is for that webinar, into a slide share kind of thing, right? Data is my favorite kind of information to repurpose. So we had for my e-commerce company that I had, we had we had hundreds and hundreds of clients who had data about how much they sold on what platform, eBay, Amazon, Etsy, blah, blah, blah. And what shipping company did they use for that particular item? And so some of those sales numbers, really, you're not giving people's data away. You're just putting percentages on a whole of our clients or our clientele or our data says this. That was one of the most popular things we did. And we broke it up and we infographed it and we videoed it and we turned it into a series and we kept doing it and we updated it over time. And it was one of the most popular out of what we did was real data or real studies from your data. So that was really cool.
Nice. Hey, Laura, I'm so sorry. This is the moment when you're live and the repair person who's supposed to be here between 1 and 6 shows up 2 hours early. So sorry about that.
That's okay.
You're
what are
awesome
you getting
to be
fixed?
taking the ball and running with it. What's that?
What's getting fixed today?
Oh, my wife's windshield, got cracked yesterday. A rock flew up on the highway. So no big deal, cool. but all good stuff that you were saying. And thank you for taking the ball and running with it. I did want to mention a couple other things because the stuff you mentioned is awesome. There are also some tools out there that allow you to recycle posts, whether those are from your blog or social media or whatever. One I really like is called Repurpost, RECURPOST. And there's other ones as well, but that one is pretty low cost and it works great. So you can kind of set, like, let's say you publish a blog post. Most people just, promote it for the next week or two or whatever, and then they promptly forget about it. But with Repurpost, you can say, I want you to retweet or repost this on different social networks, at a certain frequency. Yeah. And you might do that for a month or two and then wait and then bring it back out of the vault, 3 months later or a year later or whatever. And so it's a great way to constantly, especially for your best content, like you were saying, once you identify those best performing blog posts and stuff, just, push it out there. Cause a lot of the game is about not just making the great content, but making sure you're promoting it a lot. So that works really well.
That sounds good. Do you know how much it is?
There's a free version and then it's premium or freemium, and it's not much. Maybe starts at $30 a month or upwards, but not a lot. There's other ones out there. I think there's another one really good called Meet Edgar.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah, Edgar's great. It's a little bit more pricey, but there are a number of those types of things like that. And I saw somebody in the comments also mention that tool, Otter, OTT. I think it was supposed to be Otter. It came across as Otto, but yeah, Otter is neat. I do have one client that records all their meetings using Otter, and it basically transcribes the conversation. So again, back to our point about if you're already having these discussions, why not grab a transcript that you can later go back and have somebody clean up and extract the best pieces of it out and see what you can do with that.
I love the extraction of quotes too. Even if you've just got a customer testimonial, right? And it's a whole half a page or something, they just went to town. You can get so many different quotes out of their testimonial that you could put anywhere, right? Anywhere. Those are great. I love those. thanks for mentioning that. And thank you for telling us about, thank you for the comments. I appreciate that. And what else was I going to say? Oh, Danielle, would you post? So I wanted her to, I hope maybe she already did, posted the article for HubSpot that has, it almost
She
talks
did.
about
Yeah.
almost everything that we've said or that we brought, they had in there already. So it's a pretty consistent vibe of how to repurpose, except for the scheduling piece, the planning ahead, the being strategic. I don't know that was in there or not. Maybe it is. I didn't read the top. But yeah, I'm a scanner. Get me to the 1, 2, 3s, right? Okay, so next week we are talking about, so everybody hates marketing. So why, how do you market? What's the approach? What's the mindset that you have to have today when we're just inundated? When nobody wants another email, nobody wants it in their face. Nobody wants another ad. How do we do that? That's what we'll talk about next week.
Nice.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you then.
Thank you.
Bye.